Aurealis Station always smelled faintly of metal fatigue and burnt cafeteria noodles, the sort of aroma that convinced visitors the universe itself might one day quit out of sheer disappointment. But Jonas Hale liked it. Or at least, he liked it more than the alternative, being planetside among people who pretended everything was normal. Out here, on an orbital station orbiting no one's home, normality was such a vague and optional concept that no one bothered pretending. He drove a transit shuttle through the station's interior ring, ferrying workers and wanderers between docking bays, service tunnels, and the markets that never closed. A human bus driver in a galaxy that thought humans were chaotic mammals with delusions of relevance. He'd take it. He noticed her long before he spoke to her. Not in the romantic sense, Jonas wasn't delusional, but in the sense that she didn't fit. Not her shape, exactly. Plenty of species came in small packages. But she moved like she was apologizing for each footstep. People bumped her without noticing. Others spoke around her as if she were an automatic door that happened to breathe. She was short, even by Keeley standards, barely to his shoulder, and built like someone had folded elegance into something that shouldn't carry weight. Her skin shimmered faintly like moonlit stone, her hair braided with metallic fibers that glowed subtly when she focused. But it was her eyes Jonas kept catching whenever she boarded someone else's shuttle. Precise, observing, and quietly resigned, the expression of someone who'd learned early that the universe expected nothing from her but compliance. She boarded his shuttle for the first time on a slow evening cycle when the station lights dimmed to simulated dusk. Jonas had leaned back in the driver's chair, sipping a lukewarm drink that claimed to be coffee, when the doors hissed open and she stepped aboard with the careful posture of someone entering sacred territory. She performed a tiny bow. Quick, precise, and Jonas nearly spilled the drink. Hello? He said, unsure whether he should bow back, salute, or hand over his wallet. Human Keeley cultural guides disagreed on everything except the warning that greetings are contextually intense. She stood perfectly still for half a second, then extended a small card. He assumed it was her transit pass. It wasn't. This is my declaration of non-hostility, she said in a calm, melodic voice that sounded like polished stones sliding across silk. I wish to travel in peace. Jonas blinked. Right. Fantastic. Love peace. Big fan. But, I just need your payment card. She froze again, glanced at the card she held, then tucked it away so fast he wondered if Keeley's hands moved at a different frame rate. She produced another card. This one looked more like a payment token and less like a diplomatic treaty. He accepted it, pretending this was all normal. She seemed relieved he didn't challenge her to ritual combat or start chanting. She moved down the aisle carrying what could generously be described as a dangerous-looking crate, metallic, sealed, stamped with warning glyphs in 3 languages. Jonas pretended not to notice until she lifted it one-handed and tucked it under her seat like it weighed as much as a purse. He almost choked on his coffee. The passengers whispered. Everyone knew the Keeley weren't physically weak, but they certainly weren't that strong. She either had augmented arms, a death wish, or a profession that required routinely ignoring safety regulations. None seemed to match her shy posture. She sat near the front, hands folded neatly, eyes forward. Jonas cleared his throat. So, what's in the crate? She looked startled, as if no one had ever addressed her voluntarily. Classified industrial material. Ah, Jonas said. So the fun kind. Fun? She repeated cautiously. Is this a human euphemism for highly dangerous? Sometimes, he admitted. Her shoulders stiffened. Then yes. He couldn't help smiling. I'm Jonas. Driver. Obviously. Though if you ask management, they'll insist I'm route attendant 3B. Her head tilted slightly. 3B? That is the designation the station assigns to waste management drones. Exactly, Jonas said. We're interchangeable. She considered this with Keeley's seriousness, then nodded sympathetically. I am Tari Vel. My registration file is incomplete, so the station lists me as additional worker. This is the designation normally assigned to temporary furniture. Jonas winced. You're kidding. I do not possess the training required to make jokes. He laughed anyway. The sound startled her. She stiffened, then relaxed into a shy, almost curious look, as if studying an exotic creature in the wild. As passengers trickled aboard, Jonas noticed how they moved around her, either ignoring her entirely or watching her with the bemused fondness one reserved for a decorative house pet. Someone brushed her shoulder while squeezing past, murmured, "Sorry, little one," and she bowed reflexively. Jonas felt something hot and irritated flare up in his chest. "They always treat you like that?" he asked quietly. She blinked. "Like what?" "Like you're fragile. Or invisible." She gave a soft, resigned smile. "Keely's stature leads many species to form assumptions. I do not mind." But she minded. Jonas could hear it in the way her voice softened defensively. He wanted to say something righteous and heroic, but humans had a reputation for dramatic speeches that made other species uncomfortable. He settled for a mutter. "They shouldn't." She stared at him for a long moment, eyes searching, and Jonas had the odd sensation she was weighing something much heavier than his words. A faint glow shimmered through her braids, like a quiet pulse of surprise. The shuttle eased away from the station platform, gliding along the magnetic rail. The lights dimmed. People settled into tired silence. Jonas checked. The route displays pretended to focus, and failed spectacularly at not stealing glances at Tari. "Earlier," she said suddenly, "when you requested exact change, was that a human dominance ritual?" He snorted. "It's a fair requirement." "So, not dominance." "Well, mild dominance," he joked. "More like petty annoyance." She processed this carefully, then nodded. "I understand. Humans establish social equilibrium by irritating one another." "That's not wrong," Jonas admitted. Her lips curved into a tiny, uncertain smile. It hit him square in the chest for reasons he didn't examine. By the time the shuttle arrived at her stop, the atmosphere had shifted. Not dramatically. Not romantically. Just warmly. She rose, lifting the crate as if gravity were a polite suggestion. As she stepped off, she paused and bowed again, but this time slower, deeper, with genuine respect. "Thank you, Jonas Hale." "For what?" "For speaking to me." Her eyes glowed faintly. "Most do not." He had no witty retort. Just a quiet nod. The doors slid shut, and Tari Vel disappeared into the crowded station walkway like a ripple of motion swallowed by indifference. Jonas sat there a minute longer than he should have. Then he whispered into the empty driver's cabin. "Well, damn." And for the first time in years, he hoped someone boarded his shuttle again. The second time Tari Vel boarded Jonas Hale's shuttle, she carried a plant. A small one. It looked like a shy green puffball fighting for its right to exist in a pot made of recycled alloy. She held it with both hands the way someone might cradle a fragile animal, and Jonas nearly forgot how to breathe because he wasn't prepared for the cuteness of a stone-eyed, deadly strong alien treating Flora like a newborn. He tried to act normal, casual, indifferent, like humans didn't melt whenever someone did something unintentionally adorable, but the plant's pot jingled faintly as she walked, and the sound tugged at him like a leash tied to his chest. She approached with determined seriousness, shoulders squared as if preparing for a diplomatic summit. "Jonas Hale," she said, voice as even as a measured breath. "I have brought you this." He looked at the plant. Looked at her. Looked at the plant again. Why?" "It is a human peace offering," she answered confidently. "I researched your customs. When humans wish to show trust, they present vegetation. This symbolizes the message, I do not intend to consume you." Jonas's brain desperately tried to reboot. "To be clear, humans don't give plants to say that." Tari blinked in confusion. "They do not?" "No. Absolutely not. I mean, it's nice, but we don't." Jonas rubbed his forehead. "Who told you that?" She thought for a moment. "A non-verified human-focused cultural archive." You mean a meme page? If that is its formal classification, yes. He wanted to laugh, wanted to reassure her, wanted to take the plant and set it on the console like a badge of honor. But he controlled himself. Barely. Well, thank you. It's thoughtful. Tari brightened ever so slightly, her braids glowing with faint silver warmth. She handed the plant to him. It was heavier than it looked. Is this soil? He asked. Weighted nutrient gel. It prevents the plant from escaping. The plant can escape? Only if motivated. He decided not to ask. The shuttle pulled away from the platform, and Jonas tried to look like a professional driver who wasn't internally debating whether he had just been given the single most charmingly confusing gift in the galaxy. Tari sat near the front again, hands resting politely, gaze steady on the passing lights of the station ring. Then the alarm sounded. A violent tremor shook the shuttle, rattling handrails and sending a jolt through the aisle. The overhead display flickered. Jonas swore under his breath and grabbed the controls as the shuttle lurched to a sudden, grinding halt. Docking lane 47 Delta flashed red across every monitor. Mechanical obstruction detected. The computer droned. Evacuation route blocked. Passengers murmured anxiously. Jonas unbuckled, ready to assess the situation. He knew the lane's maintenance history. He knew its structural flaws. He knew that if something had collapsed, they'd be lucky if it only took out the lane. Tari stood, plant forgotten on the seat beside her. Jonas Hale, she said quietly. Is there danger? Potentially, he said. Just stay put, okay? I'll check. The rear doors refused to open fully, jammed by twisted metal visible through the gap. A cargo hauler, massive, industrial, and clearly unregulated, had collapsed sideways, its bulk crushing support beams and sealing the lane shut. Sparks rained like angry fireflies. The passengers were losing composure in layers, first confusion, then fear, then the special brand of galactic panic that formed when bureaucracy inevitably worsened the situation. The emergency comm crackled uselessly. Jonas grimaced. Of course. They probably want us to fill out a hazard form before screaming for help. Tari stepped forward. Your station's procedures are inefficient. That's the nicest possible way to put it. She studied the collapsed hauler with the calm focus of an engineer or a soldier, or someone entirely used to solving problems alone. If we remain here, will the structure continue to fail? Probably, Jonas admitted. The upper frame is bending. If it gives out, it'll crush this entire lane. Passengers gasped. Someone began praying to their homeworld's ancestral spirits. Someone else began cursing their ex-spouse. Someone near the back claimed loudly that this would never have happened if humans weren't allowed to operate heavy vehicles, which was doubly insulting because Jonas wasn't the one who crashed the hauler. Tari set her jaw with soft resolve. Then I will help. He blinked. Help how? She didn't answer. She walked toward the obstruction. Tari, wait. She turned back long enough to offer him a gentle, almost apologetic expression. Please trust me this once. Then she moved. Her small frame approached the mangled metal wall of crushed machinery and dislodged beams, and Jonas couldn't decide whether to stop her or throw himself bodily over the controls and pray. Tari placed her palm against a buckled support beam. The beam creaked like an animal in pain. Then, slowly, impossibly, she lifted. Metal shrieked. Sparks hissed. Passengers fell silent all at once, as if the entire shuttle swallowed its breath. Tari Vel, barely shoulder-high to Jonas, stood beneath the twisting weight of industrial steel and held it like a defiant miracle. Her arms trembled but did not falter. Her braids lit up in a full radiant glow, shimmering with strength and something deeper, something ancient, maybe, or simply unpracticed courage. Jonas felt his heart thud against his ribs. Holy, Tari! That beam weighs. I know. She strained. You don't have to. Yes. She breathed. I do. Jonas snapped into motion. Everyone stay calm. Move away from the obstruction, slowly. I'm reversing the shuttle. The shuttle hummed as he engaged reverse thrust. Tari shifted her stance, muscles quivering, but she didn't let go. Not until the shuttle backed safely into the adjacent lane, metal scraping but not collapsing further. "Tari!" Jonas shouted as soon as the path cleared. "Come on! Jump!" She didn't hesitate. She darted forward with a sudden burst of speed, vaulting over debris just as the entire structure sagged, crumpling under its own massive weight. The cage of beams crashed behind her like thunder chasing her heels. She landed inside the shuttle, breath tight, cheeks flushed with silver luminescence. The passengers erupted in cheers. Some applauded. Some stared in reverent awe. A few whispered things like, "She's so small, how?" and, "Did we just witness a warp strength anomaly?" Jonas knelt beside her. "Tari, are you okay? Are you hurt? Are your arms, do Keely arms even get sore? I don't know how your muscles work. Should I call a medic? Should I?" "Jonas," she whispered, panting lightly, "you are speaking very fast." He shut up instantly. She smiled weakly. "I am not injured." He exhaled so hard it could have powered a wind turbine. And then she said, in the gentlest voice he'd heard from her yet, "I am grateful you came back for me." "As if I'd leave you behind," he said. "What kind of human do you think I am?" Her eyes softened. "A strange one." He laughed. "You have no idea." The shuttle doors closed. The station alarms blared. Bureaucracy would eventually arrive to interrogate everyone. But for now, Jonas drove them away from the wreckage with his heart pounding and his hands steady, the strange plant rolling gently against the console. Tari Vel, the small alien no one noticed, had just saved an entire shuttle of strangers. And Jonas knew, absolutely knew, this wasn't the last time she would upend the universe he thought he understood. Word of the incident traveled faster than any official report. It spread in whispers through maintenance tunnels and in exaggerated retellings over cheap drinks in the lower decks. By the next rotation, half the station claimed they'd seen Tari Vel lift a cargo hauler the size of a small moon. Others swore she'd caught falling debris with her teeth. Someone insisted she was secretly a Keely war priestess disguised as a modest worker. Jonas discovered these rumors the same way he discovered everything he didn't want to know, by overhearing two engineers gossip while he refilled the shuttle's cooling reservoir. "She's tiny," one said. "Like a decorative desk sculpture. And strong enough to bench press an escape pod. Do you think she's single?" Jonas accidentally squeezed the coolant handle too tightly and sprayed his boots. He pretended it was fine. He pretended he didn't care. He pretended very hard. Tari didn't seem to notice any of the attention. Or maybe she noticed all of it and simply filed it away under unnecessary disturbance. Her species tended to process emotional noise differently. Keely could ignore insults or praise with equal grace, but a minor mispronunciation of their name could haunt them for years. But she did notice Jonas waiting for her the next day. She stepped onto the platform where he leaned against the shuttle, acting entirely casual in a way that fooled no one but himself. "Jonas Hale," she greeted him. "You are early." "So are you," he countered. Her braids glowed faintly, betraying her pleased confusion. "I received a station summons." His smile vanished. "What kind?" She handed him a shimmering holoslip stamped with the insignia of the Interdepartmental Safety and Capabilities Office, a name so bureaucratically dense it practically hummed with red tape. He groaned. "Oh, perfect. The ISC office. They investigate." "Oh, perfect. The ISC office. They investigate anything more interesting than a spilled drink. They wish to discuss the incident. By discuss, they mean interrogate you and assume everything was your fault." She considered this. "This is a cultural insight, yes?" "Very much yes." She nodded solemnly. "Then I appreciate the warning." They traveled together to the ISC office, a labyrinth of frosted glass panels and humming data terminals staffed by people who spoke as though each word cost them a measurable unit of lifespan. Jonas stayed beside Tari because he knew how these places worked, someone small and polite became the perfect target for a misfiled accusation. A reception worker regarded Tari with the bland curiosity one might reserve for misplaced luggage. Species? Kiali. Tari answered. Occupation? I am uncertain. Jonas muttered. She saved a bus full of people yesterday. The worker typed this into their terminal with a speed suggesting it did not improve Tari's standing. Motivation for involvement? She didn't want me or the passengers crushed. Jonas snapped. The worker raised an eyebrow. Please refrain from emotional outbursts in the documentation area. I wasn't. He began, but Tari gently touched his sleeve. It is fine. She murmured. The worker looked between the two of them with sudden interest, as if spotting a new species of rumor. Ah. You brought your handler? Jonas sputtered. Handler? I'm not. She doesn't need. Why would? Yes, Tari said calmly. He is my Jonas Hale. The worker nodded approvingly. Good. Humans require supervision during administrative proceedings. Jonas made a strangled noise. Tari misunderstood it as human cultural modesty and felt a warm flicker of pride. They were escorted into an interview chamber where 3 officials waited, one from safety, one from infrastructure, and one from public relations, the deadliest of the bunch. They questioned Tari with rapid, clipped precision. Oh, perfect. The ISC office. They investigate anything more interesting than a spilled drink. They wish to discuss the incident. By discuss, they mean interrogate you and assume everything was your fault. She considered this. This is a cultural insight, yes? Very much yes. She nodded solemnly. Then I appreciate the warning. They traveled together to the ISC office, a labyrinth of frosted glass panels and humming data terminals staffed by people who spoke as though each word cost them a measurable unit of lifespan. Jonas stayed beside Tari because he knew how these places worked. Someone small and polite became the perfect target for a misfiled accusation. A reception worker regarded Tari with the bland curiosity one might reserve for misplaced luggage. Species? Kiali. Tari answered. Occupation? I am uncertain. Jonas muttered. She saved a bus full of people yesterday. The worker typed this into their terminal with a speed suggesting it did not improve Tari's standing. Motivation for involvement? She didn't want me or the passengers crushed. Jonas snapped. The worker raised an eyebrow. Please refrain from emotional outbursts in the documentation area. I wasn't. He began, but Tari gently touched his sleeve. It is fine. She murmured. The worker looked between the two of them with sudden interest, as if spotting a new species of rumor. Ah. You brought your handler? Jonas sputtered. Handler? I'm not. She doesn't need. Why would? Yes, Tari said calmly. He is my Jonas Hale. The worker nodded approvingly. Good. Humans require supervision during administrative proceedings. Jonas made a strangled noise. Tari misunderstood it as human cultural modesty and felt a warm flicker of pride. They were escorted into an interview chamber where 3 officials waited, one from safety, one from infrastructure, and one from public relations, the deadliest of the bunch. They questioned Tari with rapid, clipped precision. They began walking back toward the shuttle platform, but a uniformed clerk intercepted them before they could leave. She carried a thick data pad and a smile sharp enough to file paperwork with. For clarification, she said to Tari, the station requires you to declare your sponsor. My sponsor? Yes. She tapped the data pad. Your physical abilities exceed acceptable norms for unregistered labor. You must have a personal advocate to oversee your placement and safety. Jonas could feel disaster approaching like a low-frequency rumble. Tari looked up at him, eyes soft with something dangerously close to hope. Should I choose someone? The clerk shrugged. Any resident willing to sign the form. And Jonas, without thinking, without breathing, without understanding the implications, said, I'll do it. Both Tari and the clerk stared at him. The clerk recovered first. Excellent. Sponsorship accepted. Bond will be registered by end of day. Tari's expression was unreadable, her braids slowly dimming to a trembling glow. You will sponsor me? I mean, yeah, Jonas said. If you want. I didn't want them assigning you to some hazardous job or. He didn't get to finish because Tari whispered his full name like it was the most precious admission she'd ever made. Jonas Hale, you have changed my future. And Jonas realized with a slow, dangerous warmth spreading through his chest that she had already changed his. The rain eased as the bus pulled away from the cliff overlook, leaving the world washed clean and smelling faintly of copper and ozone. Nara settled into the seat beside him, still clutching the emergency blanket like she wasn't convinced reality would behave if she let it go. The other passengers watched them with that awkward, sideways curiosity reserved for close calls and unexpected intimacy, though a few offered shy nods as if acknowledging something had shifted in the air. After all, not many people saw a short Calath woman haul a grown human man back from the edge of a 300-meter drop. And definitely not with the kind of disciplined ferocity that suggested she'd done it before, on purpose, recreationally, or as part of some very alarming cultural tradition. Thomas kept his hands on the wheel because if he didn't, he suspected he'd do something stupid like reach over and brush her cheek just to make sure she was still breathing. Nara's breathing was slow, deep, controlled. Calath soldiers were trained to regulate every function of their body to maintain emotional clarity. But her fingers, folded neatly in her lap, twitched like they were trying to type out the confession she refused to voice. You can laugh, Thomas said softly. She blinked. Laugh? At me. At the situation. At the fact that apparently my death wish can be countered by someone half my height and twice my stubbornness. I am not half your height, Nara protested automatically, her voice climbing up into that indignant warble that Thomas pretended not to adore. 3/5 then. 4/5, she snapped. On my file. He smiled. Right. That extra fifth probably saved my life. That earned him a glare bright enough to power the cabin lights. But beneath her irritation, something warm flickered, real concern, real fear, and real relief that he was okay. She hid it the way Calath people hid everything, folding it into their posture like it was classified information. Humans wore their emotions like street vendors advertising products. Aliens, in turn, often found humans overstimulating, messy, or confusingly sincere. But Nara, for all her rigidity, never looked at him like he was too much. If anything, she looked at him like she didn't know what to do with someone who didn't treat her like she was too little. He slowed the bus to a gentler pace, letting the wheels glide over the freshly washed road. Nara, you know you saved my life. You endangered your own, she corrected. I simply countered the vector. That's Calath for I care about you, huh? She inhaled sharply. I care about many things. And many people. Right. Statistically speaking? Thomas grinned. She scowled harder. But her tail, usually tucked like a disciplined extra limb, lifted slightly, curling once in the air. A Calath instinctive signal, according to the orientation handbook, meaning a mix of relief and embarrassment. She must have forgotten to suppress it. Your tail's telling on you, he murmured. Immediately, it dropped like a guilty snake. It is doing no such thing. I think you like me. I think you hit your head. Thomas opened his mouth to retort, but the radio crackled instead. Dispatch. Of course. Because the universe hated cinematic timing. Route 8, you still operational? The voice sounded bored, as if unaware the last 20 minutes had included heroics, confessions, and a moment of borderline spiritual clarity. Thomas pressed the comm. Yeah, dispatch, we're stable. Minor weather issue resolved. Copy that. Be advised, you've got a pickup in 6 minutes. Standard transfer. Nara stiffened. Transfer? Thomas didn't like the sound of it either. Dispatch continued with bureaucratic indifference. Calath personnel. Widow class. Priority movement. She'll board at the next stop. You'll drop her at the sector embassy. Nara's jaw tightened. Thomas felt the shift before she spoke. I know who that is, she whispered. She's being relocated. Relocated? Thomas echoed, though he could guess the meaning. Caliph relocations were often quiet exiles disguised by polite language. Nara swallowed. They are removing her from the colony. Permanently. He looked at her, really looked, and understood the unspoken part. Caliph widows weren't retired. They weren't supported. They were dismissed. A civilized galaxy always found pretty words to hide its ugliest habits. Is this about what she did? He asked quietly. Nara nodded. She defended her home. Too fiercely, according to the tribunal. Too fiercely? Thomas repeated, incredulous. She is short, Nara murmured. Like me. People underestimate short Caliph. Until we stop allowing it. Her voice trembled, just a fraction, but enough to cut through the air like a warning. Thomas slowed the bus even more. He didn't want to rush this moment. What do you want to do? Nara stared at her hands. The widow has no remaining clan. No advocate. She will be alone. You want to help her? Yes. But my influence is… She gestured at herself. Limited. Not from what I've seen. She shook her head sharply. Thomas, you don't understand. If I interfere with a tribunal order, I could lose my status. My home. My position here. Everything. Then don't interfere, Thomas said. Advocate. Nara's brow furrowed. Humans make such distinctions like it changes the risk. Sometimes it does. Her breath hitched. Not fear, hope. The fragile, reluctant kind that grew only when someone else held it steady. The bus rolled up to the next stop, where a solitary Caliph woman stood under the street lamp. Her posture was rigid, her suitcase small, her eyes hollow. She climbed aboard with quiet dignity. The galaxy liked its rules neat, its hierarchy stable, its people predictable. Humanity had never been good at that. Humans loved too loudly, messed up too frequently, and stood beside others too stubbornly for any empire to stay cold forever. Nara looked at him one more time, as if weighing her next breath. Thomas, she whispered, if we do this, there is no going back. He met her eyes, unflinching. Good. I'm tired of going back. Her tail curled once, unhidden, unashamed. And the rain outside finally stopped pretending it could drown out the sound of change.